please welcome Georgia Power Company President and CEO and Georgia Chamber's 2015 Board Chair, Paul Bowers.
Well, good morning, good morning. I just love that video when the lights come on in Georgia. So everybody, I'm glad some of y'all got that. Everyone in this room has a role to play in making Georgia better. Be it in education, be it in job creation, be it in infrastructure improvement, in policy development to make our Georgia stronger, or in energy policy to ensure that we have the energy for the next 100 years. It takes all of us in this room to make Georgia better for all our citizens in this state. So when the question is asked, what will our legacy be? It's really asking a question of you. What is your purpose? What role will you play? How will you make Georgia better? So when you think about this next 100 years, as we begin our centennial celebration, we must thank our leader that has shown such discipline and focus in our 99th year. The Chamber is a much stronger, in a relevant position to serve this state better. Ernest Greer, I want you to stand one more time. I want to personally thank you for your leadership. Ernest, it's been an honor to serve with you. You've done an outstanding job, and we wouldn't be in this position today if it wasn't for you. Thank you. It's also a pleasure to announce our 2016 Chair-elect. Hank Lingenfelter, Executive Vice President of Atlanta Gas Light, is going to be our 101st Chair of the Georgia Chamber. So Hank, will you please stand and be recognized? Hank will be a great leader for this chamber. He's a truly man that is passionate about making Georgia better. As I take on this role as chair, I also want to brag on my team, that I am honored to represent them on a day-in, day-out basis. They are the men and women that ensure the reliability of electricity at Georgia Power. They're the men and women that make sure the power flows. They're the men and women that make sure our customers are served. It is an absolutely honor to serve as the president of Georgia Power, representing them on a day-in, day-out basis. We also recognize the Public Service Commission, because as we endeavor in this state and thinking about the future and looking at what we're having to do to serve the power needs of this state, the vision, the policy decisions that are being made today at the Public Service Commission is setting up our state for the next 60 to 80 years. And yes, we are endeavoring on the first nuclear plant in America in over 30 years because of their vision, their leadership, and their approval. So I want to thank you, Commission, for your diligence and focus. You know, as we start this centennial, we'll take it with much pride to recognize our past, our successes, those that have led the way to build the foundation of this great state. But we also have to think about the future, plan for the future, and ensure that we are laying the foundation for the next generation of leaders. The Chamber has worked to ensure we maintain a professional business environment with low business costs, workforce development programs, infrastructure to support the growth that we'll see, and yes, a focus on job creation. None of this would happen without the partnership of each of you in this room, the elected leaders and the local chambers. So as we begin this 100 years, the Chamber must be relevant to all of us, to all the businesses in Georgia. We must ensure that we tackle the issues that are facing us today. Jobs, every Georgian having an opportunity to work. That is our opportunity to give people a better life. By 2020, there will be another 1.5 million jobs created in this state, and 60% of those jobs will require some education higher than a high school diploma. In education, our issue of making sure every student has an opportunity to excel. Our graduation rates are on the continuous climb, but we can't be satisfied with just average. We must introduce STEM curriculums at the lower levels to ensure that we get our kids ready for those opportunities that are abounding for those kids. Last year, Georgia universities graduated 59,000 students with degrees. 3,800 of them had a technical or engineering degree out of 59,000. We have to do better than that for the economy that we'll be facing in the future. Infrastructure in our ports, be it our airports or be it transportation or energy infrastructure. In transportation, today we have 123,000 miles of highways, interstates, or county roads. DOT says on a daily basis, people drive 300 million miles a day on these roads. We have to provide the funds to ensure that we maintain and improve that infrastructure for the growth that we'll experience in the future. And in 2030, this state will need more infrastructure around energy. We'll have a need for almost 10,000 megawatts that will have to be built in this state. We have to plan for the future. And our state has to protect its brand. The #1 state in doing business. As Ernest said, 3 individual entities have said we are the best in doing business. We have to protect that. So as I close, I'm reminded of a book that I read almost 20 years ago. It's a book called Barbarians at the Gate. And if you recall that book, it's about a story of the first big corporate takeover, RJR Nabisco. Now, it's a great story about vanilla wafers and cigarettes being combined in one company. But you think about that story, that they were doing great. Their business was solid. They were making profits. Their stock price was languishing around $50 a share. Their leadership in that company got complacent and satisfied with the status quo. They recognized that there might be a little bit more value in their business. So they started endeavoring on what can we change, what can we do to make the company better. And one of the ideas was, well, let's take it private. Maybe we can get $75 a share. Well, matter of fact, the president, Ross Johnson, said, I'll buy the company at $75 a share. Well, of course, the board of directors said, well, if you think it's $75 a share, why is it still at $50? Let's go look and see who else can possibly buy this company. And the story goes on, and if you remember KKR, Kohlberg, Kravitz, and Roberts, the first big takeover in America, went in and bought the company. They bought the company for $110 a share. They broke the company up. They separated the vanilla wafers from the cigarettes and made billions of dollars. But the moral of that story is, if we don't take care of the business at hand of focusing on the future and moving forward and being passionate about what we're doing and always looking for making something better. If we don't do that as leaders of this state, somebody else will be sitting at these tables tomorrow. It won't be a KKR, but it'll be others that will fill the void because we are not willing to take on that role as leaders of pushing this state forward. So as we think about that story and think about our role as leaders in this state, go back to the question, what will our legacy be? What will our purpose be as leaders in Georgia? We have to make Georgia better. In everything we do, every action we take, we have to make Georgia better. So I implore you, be leaders, be passionate, grab the baton, and let's move this state forward. So with that, thank you. Now I have the honor to introduce a video. I don't have Johnny here in person, but our senator, of course, is at task in Washington. You know Johnny Isakson as our friend, one that has been focused on businesses and moved businesses forward for a long, long time. He is now one of the only double chairs in the Senate. He is the chair of the Committee on Veterans Affairs. He's the chair of the Select Committee on Ethics. He's on the Committee of Finance. He's on the Committee of Foreign Relations. He's on the Senate Committee of Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. He is extremely active. He couldn't be with us today, but he wanted to share his thoughts about our great state. So please turn to the video.
Well, good morning and Happy New Year. I'm United States Senator Johnny Isakson from the great state of Georgia, and I'm glad